Well, forget Charles and Camilla, William and Kate, Harry and Meghan, the royals paving a new future for Monarch.
I'm 75 now and I can't remember anybody except the Queen Bee.
Over the last decade, I, like many of you, have met people from all walks of life. I've seen that experiences such as homelessness, addiction and poor mental health are often grounded in a difficult childhood.
Well, forget Charles and Camilla. Forget William and Kate. Even forget Harry and Meghan. Because this time, the real royal shock came from Katherine, Princess of Wales. As the palace prepared for her grand coronation, the dawn of a new royal era, no one could have imagined the demand that would shake the monarchy to its core. Katherine made it clear. I will not take the crown unless Camilla's family is completely removed from royal matters. The statement sent shockwaves through the palace. For weeks, anticipation had been building. Royal planners spoke of elegant floral displays, security briefings, and the symbolism that would define the new queen's legacy. Yet, behind the glitter of state jewels and ceremonial rehearsals, something was deeply wrong. Inside the gilded walls of the palace, Katherine was not celebrating. She was resisting. Usually calm and composed, she began cancelling meetings, skipping pre-coronation events, and turning away from the very people organizing her big day. Her aides noticed the shift. At first, they assumed exhaustion, but soon realized something far more serious was unfolding. Katherine stopped responding to coronation protocols altogether. And then, in one private meeting, everything changed. Behind closed doors sat King Charles, Prince William, and two senior advisors. Katherine entered the room and calmly delivered her ultimatum. The silence that followed was heavy. Charles, stunned and visibly unsettled, tried to reason with her. But Katherine stood her ground. She would not compromise. Her decision wasn't fueled by anger, but by principle. For years, she had watched Camilla's influence quietly grow, not only over Charles, but within the royal household itself. And what truly alarmed her wasn't just Camilla, but her children and grandchildren, slowly becoming part of royal life. Katherine feared that the inclusion of Camilla's family blurred the very boundaries that protected the crown. To her, it wasn't about ego. It was about legacy, and the future her own children would one day inherit. As news of her ultimatum spread inside the palace, panic set in. Some courtiers urged Charles to stand firm, while others begged him to make peace before the monarchy faced a public disaster. Camilla, present during the confrontation, reportedly left the room in tears. In hushed conversations, aides even discussed postponing or rewriting the coronation plans entirely. The palace press office scrambled to keep the story under wraps. But it was too late. Within days, whispers of Katherine refusing the crown began spreading across Europe, and the monarchy found itself on the brink of a PR nightmare. But for Katherine, this was never about headlines or public perception. It was about integrity. Her stand wasn't rebellion, it was conviction. She wasn't rejecting the crown. She was demanding that the institution she would one day lead return to its true values. To understand Katherine's bold defiance, we have to look back at years of quiet tension between her and Camilla. Katherine's path to royalty was built on discipline, dignity, and unwavering respect for tradition. She didn't marry for power. She married to serve the crown, to uphold centuries of legacy and duty. Camilla's journey, on the other hand, was different. Her relationship with Charles began as scandal, not tradition. And though time softened the public's view, her integration into the royal family came with controversy, especially when her relatives began appearing at official royal events. To Katherine, this was unacceptable. William's bloodline, the heirs of Diana, represented the monarchy's future. And yet, Camilla's grandchildren, without royal lineage, were being treated as equals to those born into the crown. Each public appearance, each event, felt like a slow dilution of what made the monarchy sacred. And behind closed doors, Katherine's frustration quietly turned to resolve. Charles dismissed her worries as emotional, but Katherine saw them as existential. The monarchy, she believed, was being reshaped from within, and not for the better. So when the time came to wear the crown, she made her stand. Her message was simple but powerful. The crown must protect its legacy, or she would refuse to wear it. Insiders soon began to notice subtle changes. Katherine quietly requested new seating arrangements, skipped joint family appearances, and planned separate outings for her children. It wasn't animosity, it was protection. A silent effort to shield George, Charlotte, and Louis from Camilla's growing influence. To the public, these moments looked accidental. But those inside the palace saw them for what they were, the quiet rebellion of a future queen who feared the monarchy she loved was changing too much, too fast. Outwardly, Katherine remained composed. She smiled, greeted the crowds, and even sat beside Camilla at church. Yet behind that polished calm, conflict was brewing. Her silence wasn't weakness, it was strategy. She was waiting for the moment when quiet resistance would no longer be enough. That moment came sooner than anyone expected. It was meant to be a light-hearted, family-friendly garden event at Windsor, a show of royal unity. The lawns were perfect, the photographers ready, the message clear, a modern, blended royal family at peace. But behind the hedges, something went wrong. As the children played, Camilla's grandson reportedly shoved Prince Louis and mocked him loudly enough for nearby staff to freeze in disbelief. The incident lasted seconds, but its impact rippled through the palace. Catherine's reaction was instant and icy. She didn't shout, she didn't scold. She simply walked away, refusing to return to her seat beside Camilla. Aides rushed to smooth things over, but those who knew Katherine understood, this was no simple mother's reaction. It was the breaking point. For the rest of the day, Katherine and Camilla exchanged no smiles, no words, nothing but silence. The tension was unmistakable. Meanwhile, Prince William was furious. Normally calm, he stormed into a security meeting demanding answers. How had a non-royal child been allowed to physically confront the son of a direct heir? His anger wasn't just paternal, it was symbolic. A child without royal blood had publicly humiliated the future of the crown. The footage from that day never saw the light of day. Cameras were confiscated, reporters warned, and press officers instructed to follow their official line. But the silence only fueled speculation. Anonymous staffers whispered, online forums buzzed, and body language experts dissected every photograph that escaped the edit. Soon hashtags began circulating, #who belongs in the crown, #queen on her terms, and the story exploded online. For Katherine, that single moment changed everything. Her son had been mocked, and the boundaries of the crown had been crossed. She decided she would no longer tolerate blurred lines or polite silence. This wasn't jealousy. It was about legacy, protecting her children and the monarchy itself from being redefined. From that day, Katherine's demeanor hardened. The quiet princess became a defender of tradition. No more forced smiles. No more compromises. The monarchy, she believed, was built on blood, duty, and heritage, not convenience. Those close to her say the pain ran deep. Behind the smiles and perfect posture was a woman weighed down by years of silent betrayal. Each year, she watched more influence shift toward Camilla's family, and each change felt like a loss, not just for her, but for her children's rightful place in history. During these difficult months, Katherine often confided in Princess Anne, who shared her respect for tradition. Anne's words became Katherine's mantra: protect the line. But her resolve only deepened her isolation. Charles dismissed her concerns, insisting the family was simply evolving. And in that evolution, Katherine saw the crown slipping away from the values Queen Elizabeth had built: honor, order, duty. To her, the monarchy no longer felt like a fortress of stability. It was becoming a battlefield. As pressure mounted, palace officials begged Katherine to maintain unity. But to her, unity built on silence was the same as surrender. So when her ultimatum finally leaked, future queen refuses the crown, it became a global sensation. The palace went into damage control mode. Camilla's allies scrambled to protect her image, while Charles struggled to balance loyalty to his wife and fairness to his son's family. William faced the hardest decision of all: to support his wife or stand beside his father. Eventually, the royals were summoned to Balmoral for an emergency meeting. But Katherine's absence said more than any speech ever could. With coronation plans in limbo and the palace deeply divided, the public had already chosen their side. Social media overflowed with support, millions calling her the queen on her terms. What began as private resistance had become a national reckoning. And Katherine, calm yet unyielding, now stood as the modern defender of the crown's oldest traditions. For the first time in decades, Katherine's influence outside the palace outweighed her power within it. The people stood firmly behind her, a modern woman defending centuries of royal tradition. But behind closed doors, Queen Camilla was fighting to protect her own legacy. Determined not to be sidelined, she demanded a private meeting with Katherine. What followed was tense and emotional, a confrontation that laid bare years of resentment. Camilla accused Katherine of trying to erase her from royal life. Katherine, calm but unflinching, reminded her that this was not about rivalry, it was about the monarchy's future. Yet the fallout was immediate. Camilla's allies whispered that Katherine was manipulative, spreading rumors meant to tarnish her image. The royal household fractured further, and King Charles found himself torn between loyalty to his wife and the unstoppable wave of public sympathy for his daughter-in-law. But beneath the personal drama, a deeper question loomed. Should the monarchy evolve through inclusion, or preserve its ancient traditions of blood and duty? Whispers inside the palace even suggested that Camilla might step down, threatening to leave entirely if her family were removed from royal affairs. And then, just as tensions reached their peak, an unexpected royal figure stepped into the chaos. Princess Anne. Silent for years, the late Queen's only daughter decided it was time to act. She called a private meeting with Charles, William, and Katherine, and brought with her a sealed letter written by Queen Elizabeth II herself. The room fell silent as Anne opened the letter. In the Queen's unmistakable handwriting were the words, "The crown must remain with those of the blood." The revelation stunned Charles. It was his mother's clear command, a hidden decree never meant for public eyes, but preserved in the royal archives. Anne turned to him and spoke plainly. "If you ignore this, you risk losing the people and the purpose of the crown itself." Her intervention changed everything. For the first time, the monarchy's internal conflict was framed not as a feud between two women, but as a battle between legacy and change. Camilla, devastated, reportedly broke down in tears, realizing the issue had moved beyond personal feelings. It was now about the very definition of the monarchy. Soon after, archivists at Windsor confirmed Anne's discovery, a handwritten decree by Queen Elizabeth II herself, never made public until now. The document made the late Queen's intentions clear. Only direct blood descendants were to hold royal duties after her reign. The revelation vindicated Katherine's stance. She didn't celebrate, instead, she felt relief. She had defended the crown, not for herself, but for its future. For Charles, the moment was agonizing. He was torn between his love for Camilla and his duty to honor his mother's written wishes. But in the end, the decree left no room for debate. Camilla's children and grandchildren were officially excluded from future royal roles and titles. Their involvement in the coronation preparations quietly ended. And from that moment, Katherine's vision began to reshape the monarchy. When the coronation finally took place, the atmosphere was entirely different. The ceremony was simple, reverent, and steeped in tradition, a clear reflection of Queen Elizabeth's values. As Katherine and William entered Westminster Abbey, the crowd erupted in applause. It wasn't just for a new queen and king, it was for the restoration of something sacred. In her coronation address, Katherine honored those who came before her and reaffirmed the monarchy's timeless promise. The crown is not power. It is duty, bound by blood, legacy, and destiny. That day, the monarchy didn't just survive scandal, it was reborn through conviction. And at its heart stood Katherine, the queen who refused to wear the crown, until it truly meant something again.